There it was, sitting under the shelf lights like a forgotten paperback in a military surplus store. The Ruger 10/22, lightweight, wood stock, chambered in .22 LR, a rifle that looked like it belonged in a Boy Scout camp, not a serious armory. For decades, most shooters barely glanced at it unless they were teaching kids or plinking soda cans behind a barn. It was too quiet, too soft, too plain. But things changed, not in a flashy, overnight, headline-grabbing way. No viral campaign, no celebrity endorsement, just a slow, deliberate shift, one prepper at a time. First, a few started grabbing them off the shelf, then they started buying them in bulk, 10 at a time. Suddenly, a rifle that once collected dust became impossible to keep in stock. This is the story of how a simple rimfire rifle, reliable, affordable, and underestimated, became a cornerstone of serious preparedness. The Ruger 10/22 made its first appearance in 1964. Since then, it has become one of the most widely owned rimfire rifles in the world. You can find it tucked in gun cabinets across generations, passed down like an old toolbox, used, appreciated, but rarely admired. It earned a reputation for reliability, but it never entered the conversation when shooters talked about serious rifles. Most of the time, it was treated like a gateway firearm, something you give a teenager for target practice, something you use for dispatching small pests in the backyard. It was the rifle that came after the Red Ryder but before the AR-15, stuck in the middle. The market was filled with louder, flashier, higher caliber options. Tactical builds, chrome finishes, polymer everything. Compared to those, the 10/22 looked modest. A wood stock and a rotary magazine were not going to steal the spotlight at the range. Gun owners who wanted impact and intimidation moved on quickly. I did the same. Years ago, I remember handling a 10/22 and thinking it felt more like a toy than a tool. The recoil was nothing. The sound barely registered. It felt too easy. It did not match the adrenaline rush of a 7.62 or the heft of a duty rifle, so it sat. Not literally, but mentally. It became background noise. Nobody bragged about owning one. Nobody posted range selfies with it, and yet, quietly, it waited. Between 2020 and 2025, the landscape around firearms ownership shifted in ways nobody expected. Ammunition availability became unpredictable. Even common calibers like 9mm and 5.56 spiked in price and vanished from shelves for weeks at a time. Many gun owners, especially those with large families or group-oriented prepping plans, started to feel the squeeze. It was no longer just about having a rifle. It became about whether you could keep it running, feed it, and train people to use it without burning through your savings. That's where the Ruger 10/22 began to make sense again. A box of .22 LR still cost less than a fast food meal, even during the worst shortages. You could buy bricks of 500 rounds for the price of 2 AR-15 magazines. What about the 10/22 in all of this? It hadn't ballooned in price like other rifles. While AR variants were jumping to $800, $1,200, the Ruger 10/22 was still sitting comfortably under $300 in most shops. Preppers took notice. At a local gun swap in Idaho in early 2025, one man drew quiet attention, not because of flashy gear, but because of what he brought with him. Inside a plain plastic crate sat 5 Ruger 10/22s. Each rifle was cleaned, sighted in, and neatly labeled with a name. No expensive optics, no tactical accessories, just function and preparation. When asked why he chose 5 of the same rimfire rifle instead of 1 or 2 more powerful options, his answer was simple. I don't want better, I want everyone to be useful. That response captured the shift in mindset spreading through the preparedness community. It wasn't about individual power anymore. It was about equipping groups, families, and small teams with tools that could be operated, maintained, and shared without burden. In that crate wasn't just gear, it was strategy. Calling the Ruger 10/22 practical almost feels like underselling it. This rifle is a prepper's Swiss Army knife, compact, low maintenance, and cheap to feed. But what sets it apart isn't just affordability. It's how many logistical problems it solves at once. A standard 10/22 weighs just over 5 pounds. That's half the weight of a loaded AK, and still lighter than a stripped-down AR. When mobility matters, ounces turn into pain. The 10/22 won't break your back on a hike, and it won't slow down a kid, a senior, or anyone in between. Then comes ammunition. A 22 LR isn't sexy, but it is smart. 1,000 rounds can fit in a lunchbox. It barely registers on a scale. You can store it by the tens of thousands without drawing attention or draining your bank account. In a collapse scenario, that matters more than ballistic stats on paper. Noise is another factor. The 1022 is naturally quiet and can be suppressed to whisper level. That makes it ideal for small game hunting, low-profile defense, or signaling without panic. And if you miss a shot, your position doesn't get lit up like a Christmas tree. People overthink survival. They obsess over gear that looks good on Instagram. But the ones who think long-term, who plan for real movement, resupply, training, and adaptability, they come back to the 1022. Not because it wins gunfights, but because it wins time, space, and control. And that's the kind of genius most folks overlook. The 1022 might look plain out of the box, but under that simplicity hides one of the most customizable rifle platforms ever made. If the AR-15 is the Barbie doll of rifles, the Ruger 1022 is her quiet cousin with a drawer full of tools and a pile of aftermarket parts. Every major component on this rifle can be upgraded, swapped, or overhauled. Barrels, stocks, triggers, bolt assemblies, optics, you name it. Want to turn it into a lightweight backpack rifle? Easy. Need a suppressed varmint killer for rural property patrol? No problem. Tactical chassis builds, precision takedown kits, even drum mags. There's a version of this rifle for every use case you can imagine, and plenty you haven't. That kind of modularity is not just a hobbyist's playground. It's a prepper's blueprint. In a world where supply chains break down and parts become scarce, being able to cannibalize or reconfigure a familiar platform is pure gold. You don't need 10 types of rifles when one can wear 10 different skins. Plenty of owners build multiple 1022s with unique roles, one for training, one suppressed, one scoped for game, and one stashed in a vehicle. It's not hoarding, it's strategic redundancy. What makes it even better is the experience it offers beyond function. There's real joy in tuning a rifle exactly to your specs, especially when you know every part by heart. The 1022 rewards that curiosity, it invites tinkering. And for people who plan with both their brains and hands, that's a beautiful thing. The Ruger 1022 has been dismissed for years because it lacks intimidation. It does not kick, it does not roar, it does not drip with tactical flair or come bundled with operator fantasies. For many, that alone made it a non-serious rifle. Some still scoff at the idea of using a 22 LR in any survival context. They point to its low stopping power, its rimfire ignition, and the fact that you can bounce rounds off a cinder block at the wrong angle. But what those critics ignore is context, and context is everything. What happens when the goal is not domination, but discretion? What if the priority is not stopping a vehicle, but feeding 5 people for 3 days without wasting a single cartridge? What if silence matters more than velocity, and weight matters more than impact? In those situations, the 1022 is not a compromise. It is a smart, deliberate choice. While others chase high-speed platforms that burn through magazines like confetti, the 1022 works quietly and efficiently. It can eliminate a rabbit at 40 yards, train a novice shooter in an afternoon, or dispatch a threat in close quarters without alerting an entire zip code. The myth that it is just a toy persists mostly among those who have never relied on a rifle for long-term utility. Once resources matter more than firepower, perception shifts fast. And when it does, that modest 22 starts looking a lot more like a problem solver than a plinker. Among preppers, gear becomes trusted through use, not marketing. And nothing earns a place faster than a rifle that works under pressure, costs little to maintain, and can be replaced without ceremony. That is exactly how the Ruger 1022 gained ground across prepper circles between 2022 and 2025, not through hype, but through repeat performance. By early 2025, conversations in forums and meetups had changed tone. Discussions were no longer dominated by AR setups or magazine capacities. Instead, people shared how they outfitted entire households with 1022s. One prepper in Central Texas posted a full breakdown of his family's loadout: 6 Ruger 1022s, each with a red dot, sling, cleaning kit, and 2,000 rounds in labeled ammo cans. His post wasn't bragging. It was a case study in scalable, affordable readiness. Another example came from a small preparedness group outside Spokane. They ran weekend drills using only 10/22s. The logic was simple. Anyone could carry one. Everyone could be trained. No ammo was wasted. No recoil to overcome. The goal was not just defense, but cohesion, and the 10/22 made that achievable. What speaks louder than numbers is adoption. When the same rifle keeps showing up in caches, vehicles, and long-term kits, it becomes clear that utility has overtaken image. Preppers are often skeptical by nature. They test before they trust. And by 2025, more and more of them were trusting this humble rimfire to do real work. To someone unfamiliar with prepping strategy, the idea of buying 10 rifles might seem excessive. Why not buy one good rifle and spend the rest on food or tools? The answer lies in what kind of problem you are trying to solve. A single high-end rifle is powerful, but it does not build a team. When planning for long-term disruption, preppers do not just think about themselves. They think about their family, their group, and their ability to equip others quickly. That means choosing something consistent, scalable, and easy to learn. What makes the 10/22 ideal for that model is not just cost, it is the uniformity. When everyone in a group uses the same rifle, everything becomes easier. Training is faster, ammo can be pooled, spare parts become interchangeable, maintenance becomes less of a puzzle and more of a routine. One prepper group in rural Kentucky started stockpiling 10/22s in early 2024. By mid-2025, they had built identical kits for 12 people: rifles, magazines, cleaning kits, suppressors, and matching sling setups. Their philosophy was clear: one platform, many operators, zero confusion. What matters most in stress-filled environments is simplicity. When your hands shake, when your gear is dirty, and when the moment demands speed, consistency becomes more valuable than customization. That is why some preppers do not just buy a 10/22, they buy 10. Because the goal is not to own more rifles, it is to create a system that works when everything else stops working. In the prepper world, value is rarely decided by trend. It is proven by repetition, experience, and field use. Over the last few years, more discussions have surfaced around why the Ruger 10/22 continues to outperform expectations, not in terms of ballistics, but in terms of practicality. One user on Reddit described how he made a deliberate decision to pass on a more expensive WK semi-auto rifle and stick with his well-used 10/22. His reason was not sentimental, it was strategic. Ammunition cost, availability, and the ability to actually train regularly mattered more than caliber or appearance. Instead of investing in something he could barely afford to feed, he bought extra magazines, bulk 22 LR, and focused on essentials like water, food, and first aid. That trade-off is not glamorous, but it is sustainable. Another thread highlighted a key advantage often overlooked: training. A lightweight, low-recoil rifle like the 10/22 allows inexperienced shooters, spouses, teenagers, neighbors to become useful quickly. In a high-stress environment, simple operation and low intimidation factor can turn passive dependence into active assets. Elsewhere, a prepper posted his survival loadout on a forum: 6 10/22s, each packed with optics, slings, and thousands of rounds stored by name. He was not showing off. He was building a system. No rifle redundancy, no confusion, no shortage of hands that could pick one up and use it. The prepper mindset rewards gear that works for everyone, everywhere, without constant supervision. That is where the 10/22 continues to prove itself, not as a trophy, but as a tool of real resilience. The Ruger 10/22 never asked for attention. It never needed to. Over time, the people who think deeply, train regularly, and prepare quietly have given it the recognition it deserves, not because it wins arguments, but because it survives scenarios. When the goal is stability, not spectacle, this rifle keeps showing up in the right hands at the right time, doing exactly what it was built to do, without drama, without fuss, and without fail. If you've had experience with the 10/22, good, bad, or somewhere in between, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear how you've used it, upgraded it, or integrated it into your prepping setup. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. We've got plenty more coming. Gear that works, setups that last, and honest takes from the field. Take care, train smart, and I'll see you in the next one.